Hey Sarah, let's take a look at your week 1 assignment 3 series of drawings here. You've got you've got some mixed quality images here. You've got some like the one down below, which are great, crisp and sharp all the way across the board. Other ones like the one on the top where it's getting a little bit blurry. It looks like there's a little bit of camera movement or maybe nudging of the scanner, although these to me look like photographs. So you got to make sure that you've got a good solid photo in place, and before you go into Photoshop and put these all together, zoom in on them, make sure that they're nice and crisp and clean. So some of these look great. I think this one looks great. This one starting to get a little blurry at the bottom but looks good on the top, and we want to have a consistent quality all the way across the board. You have definitely given yourself a challenge with these assignments. With this one in particular, the number of shapes that you're dealing with, which is one more, at least in this case, than what is kind of required, and the multiple overlapping. In all of these, you're creating some very tight spaces. This one, I think, is doing a lot to create these very difficult areas where you have to navigate with the marker. And so I think the level of difficulty is very high. So there are some things that we're seeing that are just due to the fact that I feel like you've just got a lot to juggle. But the main thing I want you to keep an eye on is maintaining the edge quality, and that requires you to maintain the drawing that you've done and doing everything you can to retain the marker within that drawing. So there's just a lot of places where I'm seeing, especially in the circles, which are very difficult, where you're breaking beyond kind of the drawing that you've made yourself. But even over here, we're seeing kind of marker breaking beyond the boundaries of the drawing. It's really kind of apparent in areas along the triangle edges here, but there's multiple instances of it, and what it does is it just creates a very uneven feeling to these shapes. A lot of these shapes, especially the circles and the squares, are meant to be symmetrical. So when the edges start to get a little bit wonky, it takes that symmetry away, and it kind of exacerbates the kind of how things feel off. So that for me would be the one thing that I want you to keep an eye on as you work your way through these kind of coming assignments, these few assignments that we'll be dealing with the next few weeks. I think consistency with the marker it's starting to work out well, although I thought you did a little bit of a better job being consistent in the last assignment, and we're seeing some good stuff with the blind here and here. These are terrific shapes that you've done a great job of just keeping the marker nice and even, and the coverage is very good. But then we see other areas where it's not quite as clean, and these are kind of things that you want to avoid, are these big gaps of white, or a lot of overlapping. Don't notice it in the gray as much, which is good to see. And I think for the side to side, I think you need to saturate the page more. We're seeing still, as we were seeing in the last assignment, a little bit of unevenness to the coverage. Here we can see individual strokes being made, which we really shouldn't for a side to side. There's darker values going on, there's lighter values going on, and it should just be kind of a nice even coloring all the way across. So I think Rigo did a really nice job of this assignment, so you can take a look at his and see kind of how even the side-to-side coverage is. Ken also, I thought, did a pretty solid job of it as well, where it is definitely tough, especially with circles where you have to deal with the curve or very tight spaces. But you should have the dual-sided markers, so the really tight spaces, especially with the side-to-side, you can just go in and kind of scrub with that little point to get the little detailed edges, and then move to the chisel as you start to get to the more open areas. But in both of these, the bottom ones, the gray and the color, I think we need to see a lot more evenness to the coverage for it to work effectively.